Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me again for the third time Mike Teener. And no, we are not brothers. I want to get that perfectly clear. The comments, I know they're coming in on that one. We were supposed to coordinate our outfits. That didn't happen. I got lazy. So welcome back, man.
It's great to see you again, bro.
Yeah, right. Like this is how we're doing it. I guarantee you, whether the comments are live or they're not live, and people are seeing this in all these comic groups, they're going to totally comment. So I just want to dismiss that claim. And obviously, you got a lot going on right now because you got a current Kickstarter going on for Black Jackets issue 3, and you told me not to ruin anything. I'm going to avoid as many spoilers as possible. But before we get into any of this, let's catch everybody up on Black Jackets. So what is the basic premise of Black Jackets? For those who've never heard of this Kickstarter, this comic, obviously we're 3 issues in, so I think it's a good starting point.
Okay. It's basically these teenagers had to take over for their missing parents who belong to a fraternal organization of monster hunters. That organization's lasted or has been around for about a little under 100 years now. So they're taking up the mantle. They're trying to figure out what happened to their parents, but at the same time fulfill the responsibilities as these monster hunters. So the kids are growing together as a family, as a unit through this whole experience, and they're also, mastering the craft of being a Black Jacket, which is the name of this fraternal organization. The story so far is they're killing a lot of monsters, and they're learning a lot about their dynamic, as I mentioned before, just how they relate to each other and how they don't relate to each other. And so there's a lot of that teenage angst. There's a lot of that family feuding that continues to go throughout the series. And as every issue progresses, there's just more and more frustrations. There's more clues. There's more questions, and there's more monsters.
Yeah, and I want to dive a little bit into issue 1 just to give an idea. So their parents just go missing. Their parents sort of don't say goodbye to them. And obviously either something must have happened or their parents are abducted or something of that nature is kind of the vibe we get. And then all of a sudden they have to pick it up. And they were sort of Black Jackets in training, I think is a safe assumption. And they go on their first mission, and they're dealing with a demon that possesses holy men. And so obviously we sort of get that entire circumstance, and then what makes things even more complicated is during that entire experience, a white entity, after they sort of deal with the demon, tells them to stay away from their parents and to stop looking. And we don't know exactly what that white demon is. And so that's kind of something that's going on. And we start really seeing how they work as a team or how they really don't work as a team, because there are issues with the 5 kids. And it's obviously Asa, Ellie, Evan, Lynn, and Jack. And some of them get along with each other and some of them don't. And it's very, very interesting just right from the outset, where we do get this idea where they're still in training in many ways. And it's kind of a Young Justice, uncooperative team vibe.
Mm-hmm. You nailed it. That's they, just like any group of friends, or when you're part of a team and you're not tied by family or blood or
or even have the experience because they're a brand new team.
Right.
I mean, this is one of those things where they were technically supposed to be, I guess, under the tutelage of Black Jackets and have a leader who was going to foster, them with teamwork exercises. And I think those are a safe assumption. So it's very interesting to see how does this team mesh up now, and what are they supposed to do? And then they're on a real mission that has real consequences. And then it's very interesting because this is real. It is, I think, the right word. Where this isn't some, fictitious, we all blend together within 3 episodes or 3 minutes. There's real conflict in this. And so what was that? That's one of the things that I really like about Black Jackets, more so than other comics out there, is that there's a sense of this being real.
Cool. Like you did such a great job of describing the dynamic between them. I'm glad, because I always wonder how it looks to others versus, me knowing everything about them and what's going to happen to them. And I have to try to hold things back and try not to put it all out there all at once. But the idea was to make sure that the relationships develop organically, that you get a sense that certain ones already didn't get along with others, that there were suspicions of some of them already, that there's a trust issue between them. There's a lack of faith in certain ones. All that's just part of, I think, the nature of a team, right? You know, if we all believed 100% in all of our team members, whatever environment we're in, that would be very suspicious. I would say that'd be very unusual circumstances. I think there's always doubt. I always think there's trust issues. There's always room for maturity. And so that's why we started with these characters as teenagers, and want to watch them grow and develop into, you know, strong, competent team members. And they're not there yet, obviously. That's definitely what propelled the series.
And to even go further, because while they're having these issues, you know, they go back to their nice mansion that I guess the Black Jackets, either one of them lives in or all of them live in, or it's the fraternity, or it's like a communal housing type thing. I'm not exactly sure, but what winds up happening is that each of them is also processing the loss of their parent, where these kids aren't bratty, spoiled, ungrateful children. And I want to make that clear, where just because they have issues with each other doesn't mean that they don't miss their parents. And some of them are being more standoffish, and some of them are being more reserved, and some of them are also trying to hide them being upset, and some of them are crying and things like that. And it's very interesting because we have two separate sides and two separate issues on the opposite side. And it's just issue one. And so what was that also like? Because obviously all these different kids would process it differently. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I think also makes it real too, because they're human still, and that they're not brats, and they're not, you know, being difficult. They're just all sort of meshing together, but they all are dealing with this problem differently.
Yeah, I think that's what makes them fun to read, to digest. I think is kind of trying to develop personalities for all of them. And that's so hard to do when you're dealing with like a comic of 21 to 22 pages. There's a lot that can happen in such a compressed amount of time. So you just try to play to strengths of characters as often as you can so that you can better define the character. And I think if I'm doing this right, which I'm still learning how to do this, you know, but if I'm doing this right, then I want to ask a reader like, hey, you know, what's Evan like? You know, what is Asa like? How do you think those two interact with each other? And if they can actually tell me what they think their relationship would be like in a broad spectrum, then I think I've done my part, you know, because that's what I wanted, was to set up some tension between certain characters, and then also find different ways to define each and every one of them, even if it's in the middle of a fight. Define the characters in the middle of the fight, you know.
You don't want to ask my opinion on Asa and Evan. There's so many things, kid, that I could say at the topic, but we all know
Asa's a lot of fun, and there's, so again, everything that I'm not telling or everything that I am showing is all intentional at this point, because I really mapped this thing out to make sure that you don't really ever quite know what's coming before it hits. So there's definitely meant to be more than one twist. There's definitely meant to be some things that really would surprise you, like, you know, if you were really invested in the characters the way that I hope the readers are. But all of it comes back to the dynamic between them. And I feel like I do that more than I spend time on the actual creation of the monster and the conflict. It's more about these characters and how they're going to mesh with each other.
Well, we all know that in issue 9 of this series, that Asa and Evan are going to tie the knot. That's a whole different ballgame. We all know, because Evan is going to be smart and say, yes, dear. Anyway.
I think he's been humbled. So
and obviously I'm joking, because I don't know what's going to happen. They get married in issue 3 completely.
That's quick. So
it's just the way it goes. You know, one day they're fighting, the next day he's on his knee proposing. It's just the way it goes. But anyhow, I don't really know what happens in issue 3.
I think that summarizes the relationship that teenagers have a lot of the time too, though, right? Just highs and lows, just every day.
And now I want to get back to what's actually really going on, because issue 2, and I'm going to spoil some stuff in issue 2. Basically, they're looking for their parents, and they sort of get a weird lead. And they sort of fight 3 witches from Salem who were executed and who are out for revenge. And I love the idea of that in of itself, where these 3 witches are monsters and they want revenge. And obviously, we all know the Salem witch trials. And I thought that was a nice touch of creating a very recognizable monster, because one of the things that is helpful in comics, and this is why people do Wizard of Oz comics and people do Alice in Wonderland and do, other things, that Neverland is big as well right now in comics, is that certain characters and attributes, even if you change up the story and flip it upside its head, and we go back to Zenescope's Wonderland, you still recognize this concept. And at least with your book, it's a brand new original idea, but when they're fighting 3 witches that are clearly from the Salem witch trials, it's a very nice touch to have that and create a sense of familiarity for the reader. And so what is that like for you in building that out and also giving the team an opportunity to bond? Because it is a nice writer's trick in many ways, whether it was intentional or not.
Right. I think, what do they call that, a bottle episode? Is that what that's called? I think whenever they're confined to one space or one room for the entire story. I don't know. I'd have to look that up again, or maybe if somebody's watching, they can comment on that. But I think they always refer to that as a bottle episode. But like issue 2 was a lot more fun for me, just because, you got more time with the characters and how they're going to talk to each other and interact. So the whole thing, and for everybody that hasn't read it, rather than going out and fighting monsters, they decide to stay home and calm down for a moment, because they're all rattled. And, like Andrew said, they got a new lead. And so they needed some time to process what just happened, what they just found out. And so they decide to stay home and take a day off. And obviously that doesn't happen. And then, as Andrew mentioned, the Salem Sisters.
I'm not ruining too much. It's really not a spoiler. I think
it's not. It's not really. It's not. It's
fair to say so much. Issue 2 came out already, and it's been out for a while.
Yeah.
And anybody who is interested in reading this, there's nothing that's majorly spoiled in issue 2.
By no means. No, and Andrew, you're probably doing a nice job, because, like, if it was me, if you're trying to get me to talk about issue 2, which I was kind of already starting on it, and I was already trying to pump the brakes because I was thinking I was going to give away too much, but you haven't done that. For me, it was late in the game when I came up with the Salem Sisters. I worked with the artist. I just call him Frank, but it's Francesco Tomaselli, but we shorted it to Frank because it's a lot easier for me. I don't do well with names with more than one syllable. So, he did. We did a lot. We spent a lot of time coming up with the Salem Sisters and designing them, and that was a lot of fun, because up until that point, I had this strict rule of, like, well, no, I didn't want to have zombies. I didn't want to have witches. I didn't want to have, the obvious things. I didn't want to have werewolves or anything like that. But the concept of witches in this was a little different, because they're dolls. They're life-size dolls is what they are. And you can't, and I don't spell that out for you, but if you're looking at the illustrations, there's something a little different about them that's off. And I loved the idea of each one embodying a different format for torture. And so you could see one drowned, one was burned alive, and one was hanged. And so the powers that they have reflect the way that they were killed. And so I kind of, as we were talking about the concept of the Salem Sisters and how that would look in the book, I got really excited and said, well, let's just do some witches. This is awesome. I love the idea too much. And so with partnering with Frank, we came up with that idea together.
And obviously this gets fun, and we really get to see them deal with a problem on their home turf and start coming together a little bit more as a team. And then obviously there's a whole nother side to this issue as well, where they start getting into something, and, well, they gotta go find a particular person who has a bigger clue on what exactly happened. And I'm saying exactly what it is because it kind of leads into issue 3, because that clue sort of leads into what exactly happened to their parents, what their parents have a dark secret, and well, they're sort of figuring out what this dark secret is. They're sort of called, I guess, to an abandoned mansion. I think that's safe to say. And well, that thing, because of this person they found, who's I think we could say this person has an association with the Black Jackets. I'm avoiding I'm being vague for a reason here, because once you know one thing, you know the other, and you know the third thing. So obviously, that's kind of where issue 3 goes into, is where they start discovering the truth. I think it is a really good way to put it. And so, what was that like for you to write and start? You plant some of the seeds in issue 2, and then those seeds start coming out and start being there and revealing the truth, and then getting into what their heritage is. And we don't have a reason why, but we have we have, I don't know, we have a motive to some degree, I think is a good way to put it. So what was that like in building that up? 'Cause there is a big shift that happens in this series, in the middle and towards the end of issue 3.
Yep. Absolutely. That I think the whole idea and the theme of this is that there can be more than one intention to a noble pursuit. There can be selfish reasons for it. There can be selfless reasons for it. You can have more than one benefit of making the decision to do what the Black Jackets do. And so the first few issues, it didn't quite define the history. So I knew that as readers, I think that's pretty taxing on them to kind of be strung along for too long. So I knew that with issue 3, I wanted to spend time on building out the world a little bit more, explaining some more of the history, since I suspended that in the first 2 issues. So I did want to definitively build out the history very quickly, and do it in a way that would be shocking to someone who would be familiar with the Black Jackets their entire lives, or was being brought into it the same way that the readers are. And that's kind of the idea of issue 3, is to make it impactful for the characters and the reader when they finally find out some pretty significant components to the history of the Black Jackets.
At this point, these kids and the new generation of the Black Jackets, which is what this is, to some degree, are completely baffled and shocked, and they are confused, and it's a real conflicting, question. And there's questions of, where are our parents still? What did our parents do? What prompted this? What was the reasons why? And where does that leave us and what we were taught being brought up? And when were we going to find out about this also? And while those questions aren't directly asked, I think it's a safe assumption to wonder those questions. And that's kind of what I think is being thrown out in issue 3. And it's also, how far does this go back? And some of this we might not get an answer to, and other things we might. But it's this idea where it's just like, okay, now, a bomb went off in their hands, for lack of a better word, and it's going to affect their choices. And it's going to affect their choices to each other and to, the entire idea of monster hunting. And so obviously a lot of stuff's sort of happening with this. And so to do that, because this is a pivotal shift, and it goes deeper than just these kids.
Yeah. It does. That's definitely, again, you nailed it, man. It's the kids are just our gateway into what's really out there, and we're seeing it through their eyes and through their experiences. And I thought that was the best way to build the world out, because they have a strange familiarity with everything, but they've been at a distance somewhat. So to be hands-on the way that they have been these last few issues, and what they experience in this issue, it matures them. They start to see the darker realities to what it is to be a black jacket and the responsibilities of it and the risks involved. And that was fun. That was actually a lot of fun to kind of help move the story forward and do something definitive that would alter the course of events the way that we would have probably anticipated that they would go. So it's I think there's some things, I think I'll meet some expectations, but I think there'll be some, I'll be subverting some as well. So I think issue 3, we did a good job of that. And I don't want to pat myself on the back with that. Like, I think Frank did a really good job of helping out with this too, because this was not the original script that we had intended for issue 3. We threw the whole thing out after he and I talked one night, and we had it was just a better idea overall. So I had went through multiple edits of an issue script and threw it all out and started it all over just because of a conversation with Frank. And that's what we ended up with. And I'm really happy that we had that conversation, and this is what we decided to do.
And obviously, there's a few surprises. I'm not gonna. I want to give something away that'll be interesting. There's. I can say something. I think it's pretty. Yeah. Maybe I won't actually. I'm thinking about not saying it. There is something that gets introduced that's very, very important in this issue. But I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna leave it at that.
And I'm really excited about where it goes after that too, because I think that's for me, that what that introduction is definitely a pivoting point, more than we could really know, more than readers could know at this point, for sure, and what it would mean long term, but significant nonetheless. And I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah.
and then obviously you mentioned something, and then I do like to talk about inside baseball. So one of the things that happened, and you stated, is that, well, you're speaking to Francesco, and what wound up happening is that he said, hey, I got this other idea, sort of presented it to you. And I've spoken to a few people, and some writers are very dictatorial in how they want to write and how they present, and they have a particular vision. And other writers tend to be very, open and are open to their artists, and different writers and different artists work differently. A writer on an artist team could work very differently than that same writer and a different artist can work. And so what was that like, that, hey, you send him a script, you got, maybe 12 pages done, you're going to say, hey, I'm going to get you the next 12 pages in a week. And then he's like, hey, I got this idea. Or how did that all come about? Because it is interesting. And obviously when an artist feels comfortable with the writer to say that and say, hey, look, I'm pretty sure he didn't say, hey, Mike, your idea fucking sucks. I'm pretty sure it didn't happen that way. I'm sure it was a little bit more polite, because if I was your artist, that's how I would speak. Like, this idea.
I've made everybody comfortable with being an asshole to me. That's one skill set I've developed, is I've made myself very easy to I'm an easy target. So with Frank, we joked around a lot. We picked on each other a lot early on. I do that all the time with everybody. Sometimes I piss people off, and sometimes I don't. And I don't know. I'm just going to continue doing what I do. But when I joke with him, I'm really brash. I'm really, I'll make fun of something that he drew if I didn't think it looked good, and he's cool with it. That's the thing. We're not sensitive people. We both realize that we're not sensitive, and that we can rib each other and we can joke around. And that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about our relationship.
So when do you know that something's not a joke, though? Because if I say to you something, and obviously we're joking about the brother thing before, obviously, but then there is a certain point where something doesn't become a joke anymore. And I think it's safe to say. So how did that conversation even go from being a joke to saying, hey, I got this idea and I want to run it by you type of thing? Because it is important to actually talk about this, because this book has changed the entire course of the comic per se. And it changes where it's going. And obviously this book is very different than issue 2 was. And so how did that all come about? And then how did you receive it? And you say, oh man, that's actually a good idea. Let me figure out how to incorporate that and then build that out. Or were you, you say, hey, go further because I'm not getting it. Because sometimes that happens with me when somebody's describing a story and then like, oh, now I get it when they explain the next paragraph type of thing. If that makes any sense to anybody, because this is super important, I think, for people to understand how Black Jackets works.
Right. And I think because we joked around the way that we did, we could be really honest with each other and be even more critical and know that we weren't going to offend the other person, because we respect each other. We really do. And we love each other. You know, he like we've already talked about, like I'm planning to go to Italy eventually and hang out with this guy. So we're definitely buds. And it's allowed us to approach each other about things very easily. So Frank got to a point where he was a lot more comfortable just asking questions. Hey, why are you doing it this way? Just understanding the intentions of characters. So we had a conversation because of that. And this was like, as we were working on issue 2 that he started this. He started asking me more and more questions of why would you have the character do this and what's their motivations and stuff. And we really had good conversations about all the characters. We had good conversations about where the story's going. And he has a better understanding now of this series, the intent, the overall vision of it. He's right there. He understands it. And so now he makes suggestions and pushes back on things, decisions that I make. So when he came back to me and said, hey, I got a great idea, he knew I was going to listen to it. You know what I mean? Like, he knew that I would shoot it down if I didn't like it, or I'd be honest with him and say, hey, I think it's Swiss cheese. There's some of it I like, some of it there's holes in. We need to fix it, but let's do it. And there's things I've included because he's just wanted to have it in there, you know, and just we do it all to make sure that it works and fits. But I think it just came from us just developing a good friendship, and then that allowed for us to collaborate more comfortably.
And then obviously you also made another decision with this issue to go from 6 to 8, and so that's a big decision as well. Where saying, hey, there's more story and I need another, 44 pages or another 48 pages to tell it. And obviously that decision has a lot of consequences, where it means more Kickstarters. It means, keeping your reader around, because how often do you do each of these books? Is it 4 times a year?
2 a year.
So now we're going from 3 a year. 6 in 3 years. Well, I can't speak today clearly, to now going to 8 in 4 years, and obviously keeping your reader more for the long haul, and then running into that problem. So what prompted that? What was that decision like for you? Obviously, you are getting married, hopefully soon. I don't know, and your lovely girlfriend, wife, partner. Many words can be described here. Pleasant words, appropriate words. Obviously, I mean, she has a say in this to some degree as well, because now it's a big financial decision, actually, in many ways. So there's a lot of moving parts going on, and obviously readers, maintaining readers, doing the story justice, a whole bunch of stuff. Also, you know what it is? God forbid, the longer a story goes on, the more things can happen to people, in it. So obviously a lot of stuff's going on. So what was that entire decision like for you? Because there's a lot of consequences that ensue out of it, both good and bad.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to do 6 issues. Now that I'm just like that. I think
success. I've convinced you. I've done my job. We can all go home here now. Everybody just go home. Take tomorrow off. Yeah.
You finally did it, man. You're the one that talked me into not pursuing my dreams. Great job. So
now imagine me talking somebody off a bridge.
Yeah, man.
I'm very good at that job.
Dude, I think you've just proven your capability, your skill set. So I think
just do it. Don't worry. Just do it. You'll be fine. Don't worry. I'm just gonna be over here smoking a cig. Go right ahead.
I don't know what the answer to the question. We just came up with more ideas. Is really all it came down to. We didn't want to stretch it out too far. 6 issues was definitely the goal, and then when we were talking about the characters and their relationships and everything that was going to happen, we realized that, sometimes in order for us to really get invested in some of the shock and some of the surprises and to have the emotional impact that I'm hoping to achieve with this series, sometimes the passage of time helps with that. You need to have some time with these characters to feel the effect, right? So I think that was one thing that we talked about early on. And then number two is, we need to better define the characters and we need more stories to develop that. So the idea was we just came up with more conflicts that helped develop the characters and further the story. And that was the only decision really, was that we had more story to tell. And that's why we decided to expand it from 6 to 8. 8's not a definitive end to just the Black Jackets universe or anything like that. Like, there's definitely room for more if people want more. But I didn't want to overstay my welcome. And I thought there was risk with that by doing 8 issues. But at the same time, I think there's still a lot of people out there that haven't got to read Black Jackets yet. So I don't know if I've really found my audience just yet either. And so, and there's truth to that too, because with the Kickstarter for issue 3, the most popular tier that I have right now is the Get Caught Up tier. So it's for all the uninitiated. And I have so many people that have just never read the series before.
This is important. And sorry to cut you off, but
no, it's all right.
You launched issue 2. When did you launch issue 2? There's a logic to my question. And it's going to make sense in a second. I think
middle of last year, summer of last year, I think.
So during the summer of last year, I don't know if you knew this, but there was more Kickstarters happening. There was actually more success. And one of the problems that happened with that, I think, last year, and partially why your Caught Up tier might be extremely popular right now, and I'm curious what you think on this, is there's a lot of good projects going on. And I think there was more people who had money, but guess what? If your project and 10 other people's projects are going on, somebody's project is going to get dropped. I mean, it's just the way it is. And that always happens with Kickstarters, but when you have 400 projects going on or 320 projects going on versus 180, and by the way, there was a higher success rate last year in the summer than this right now, and there were more projects, so that's a good thing, which doesn't really make economic sense per se, because it should be the other way around technically. But that's not my point. My point is that all of a sudden, probably what's happening is that there's less projects, and they're saying, "Oh man, I really wanted to back that, but I only had $100, and that was sort of, I prioritized projects A, B, C, and D, and then that was E." And now they have money, and they're like, "Well, I like this project, and this is A now, and then there's B, C, and D," and that might be part of the reason why. And so I'm curious what you think about that.
I mean, I'm still very green to all this and still learning what works and what doesn't. And I don't think a year like the year that we had really gives you a true pulse of what you can expect to see. But you're right about one thing, is that there are a lot of projects. There's a lot more great books out being crowdfunded on Kickstarter right now. I just pulled up everything that I've backed that's still going right now, that hasn't actually hit their deadline yet.
And even before we went live, we were speaking about my guest before you. Yeah. And that's a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing tabletop game, and that's doing 130,000+.
It's insane.
And so my point is that there's a lot of other things, and we also are speaking about another guest I had, Dawn Mateek and JP Roth, and they have an art book. And I don't mean to detract from your project right now, because I want people to obviously go back, and I'm going to show some rewards in a second here. But one of the things is that there's a lot of projects on right now. There's a lot of really, really good projects out there. And there was a lot of good projects all of last year, and there was a lot more than there is right now. And it's kind of crazy. And so, I mean, I've backed projects that look awesome. A few months ago, I mean, that AEW Butts in the Seats project looks great by Dirk Manning, and then there's other stuff that looks awesome, like Ninja High School, and even, Tom Hutchinson's book, that Oz series. And then there's a variety of other things that are just coming out that I know that are going to come out in the next few, months or so. So obviously it's very interesting. And I just want to know what your opinion is, because I just think this is absolutely fascinating, because I think it's a safe assumption that more projects should mean that more projects fail, and that couldn't happen. And it's crazy with 2020 and even going into 2021.
I think more people are familiar with Kickstarter now, so it's bringing in a whole new audience. I think what helped was more exposure from publishers starting to put books on Kickstarter. I guess a great example of that was, Keanu Reeves' book Berserker, right? I mean, that's like the number one. But there's been others,
So let's talk about that, because obviously I have the opinion, I think Kickstarter is for everyone. I think it's great. I think that big names can come in. I think small names can come in. I think Kickstarter is the great equalizer. Right. I think a bunch of big names have come in and they were expecting to do more, and they didn't, because they didn't know exactly, and I think they were somewhat disappointed. And when I say they were expecting to do more, they still did over six figures. But it's the idea that they were expecting to do more, like $500,000 to $1 million, and they didn't reach that goal exactly. But at the same time, when big publishers come in, they do tend to draw and suck out oxygen, and they do tend to come in and suppress. And you can say, well, everybody belongs to Kickstarter, and who are we to gatekeep per se? But at the same time, and it gets tricky in that regard. So how do you feel about that? Because just because somebody's backing Keanu Reeves' book doesn't mean they're backing your book per se. But again, if all of a sudden, if one person is a gigantic lightning rod, it definitely draws attention away from everything else. Right. And it's the same with everything in life. It's the same thing with at a convention too. Certain things draw attention, and whether that person was going to buy from you or not, if their attention is automatically going to X, then that's an issue. And with everybody home in particular, all throughout 2020, it's very complicated. And look, again, I am a capitalist. I believe free market solves everything, but I also believe that sometimes people don't know what they're doing in the free market either. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's just you don't know the dire consequences of said item. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you shoot a gun in the air. You don't know if that gun's going to hit somebody. The bullet's going to hit somebody. You know you shot the gun, but you don't know what the other consequence out of that is. And I know that's not the greatest example, but it gets the point across really quickly.
I think so. I think when we look at the platform and think about our role and everything, I think we have to stay pretty humble, and we can't be so arrogant to think that one platform only exists for us. I think when something becomes popular
and profitable,
right, there's going to be others that come along and want to be a part of that too, and you can't blame them. So it's like festivals, I think, is the best example of it. Like, I would like to think of myself as like the opening band, or I get a time slot at a festival that's not popular, like the crowd's not coming over to me right now because, I'm not on the main stage at this music festival. Right. So, but the thing is I am in the space where I have that exposure, and that's something more than I would have had before. And so I'm grateful for that. And more people are coming because of those headliners, which gives me more opportunity to have that exposure. So I'm grateful when big people come over and attract people to the platform. And that does allow some people that have just gotten familiar with it to navigate the space and go explore. And I might find some of my best fans just because of some other project that attracted people to Kickstarter. So I'm more of the optimistic perspective on that. I think that there's a space for everyone in this. And if somebody chooses to back something else instead of mine, I mean, I'm not going to blame the other person for that. I
So
need to look in the mirror and say, well, what do I need to learn from this so that they want to do mine instead if they have to choose?
I'm going to throw out a challenge because this is something that's been going on in comics, and it actually crossed my mind. So comics, and I know you've never been to a convention before, but comics at cons have been shrinking for the most part. And we have now gone from Comic Cons to everything cons and pop culture cons.
Right.
And so do you think that this is somewhat of that degree? Because now we have Celebrity Alley, we have, DC's got a big booth, Marvel's got a big booth. We got all these, top signing people there. We got big name signers there. We got, massive cosplay stuff now at conventions. And it seems to me that when big names come in, it's now becoming less about indie comics, which was what Kickstarter in the comic space was more about. And that it's almost having what cons went through about 20 years ago in 2001, Phantom Menace, that's that fault. I kid you not. Fun fact about San Diego. San Diego, in order to promote the Star Wars movie, George Lucas bought up a bunch of tables at San Diego and put a bunch of Star Wars stuff to promote the movie. That's how we got celebrities at Comic-Con. That is legitly how that happened. And that has legitly, after 20 years, is why you have celebrity wings at cons and why comics have shrunk. And I feel to some degree that's where Kickstarter is going. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's still an indie platform and indie creators can be there. But I think that there's this concept where people are not mindful of it. And it's okay it's okay to want to do that. That's fine with me as long as we know what we're doing intentionally for it. And obviously I'm new to Kickstarter as a backer in the last 2 years extensively. Not even the last 2 years, probably the last 18 months. So I'm with you to that point where I'm new to it. It's just that after 150 interviews, give or take, most of them being indie comic creators, I get a sense and then I have a real understanding looking through so many projects of what's out there.
So,
You can challenge me. I'm totally cool with my idea of being shot up.
I think, well, no, I agree with you in a lot of ways. I think nothing that you said, I think anyone could really disagree with, but at the same time, we're going to have to just continue to innovate. I think when we realize that we're not getting connected to readers, we're going to have to find a new platform or a new means to do so. We just have to learn where are they going if they're not coming here.
I'm going to take a shot at summing it up to some degree. Do you feel that maybe 2 years ago, you just had to be on Kickstarter and did a little promotion and not do outreach and not actually have to do things like this or not have to do 20 of these to promote your project or run Facebook ads or actually be active in a Facebook group or a Discord group? And now if you're on Kickstarter and you're an indie creator, you have to be almost a marketer too. And you got to be, I don't want to say hustling your project, but you got to actively come up with a strategy to push out your project, because now it's become a more competitive field, both with other indie creators and even big names, because I can't get Keanu Reeves on my show. I know some people might think that I can do amazing things, but I can't get Keanu Reeves on my show, but I can get you, I could get Chuck Pino, I could get, Santine Phoenix, who was on earlier. I'm going to be getting 2 people tomorrow on who all have Kickstarters currently going on. And when they get on my show, they have the ability now to get in front of my 4,000 people that like my Facebook page, all the comic groups I put in, all the other groups that are not comics that I put in, all the other people that I do that are not comic related wind up coming over and might be interested in wrestling, and they get that access to that. And that's all intentional on my end. So do you think that now is more of a focus because of this? Because that's what I think, is that I think that people now have to actively say, okay, I can't be beholden to just throwing it on Kickstarter and putting my Kickstarter link up in a Facebook group. I now actually have to actively let people know, hey, I'm here. This is my project. This is what it's about, type of thing.
There's a lot that can be said about it, and there's a lot that I don't know. So it's kind of tough for me to really.
You should take the risk, and
I think, yeah. So I'll tell you.
And if you're wrong, you're just ignorant on the topic because you haven't learned. You can't might lose.
Right. Yeah. I feel like you just have to just fire on all cylinders. I think that you have to make sure that you explore as many avenues and platforms as possible to promote the book. Have I done that? No, I haven't tried to reach out and do a lot of these like interviews or conversations like this. I haven't done a lot of these just because, you know,
You want to get rejected. You're very sensitive.
I'm super sensitive. I think
It's like a bad breakup with a girl.
It's never
terrible. Wiped out for 6 months,
dude.
Especially if you put money into her, it's terrible.
Right. I don't know. I don't. I think I just never considered the options, and I think a lot of people probably don't think about how much, like you said, they have to be their own champion. They have to be their own marketer, their own agent, and they don't think about that.
I come at it from a very different angle, where most people, in my opinion, do not come in as a podcaster or hosting video or doing a video interview or doing a Facebook live stream. I come into that sector so that at some point I know a bunch of people that you know and that I know, and a lot of other people say, when are you writing your project? And I'm joking around, but I'm going to come at it from a very different angle because I am on the other side of this. And I didn't go to school for any of this, but I've been active in hosting a podcast for 7 years. And so I have come at this of guest relations, presenting panels, promoting things online, growing a fan base, paying for Facebook ads type of stuff. And then in 7 years, I've done a lot of stuff, actually figuring out how to gain fans, understanding who your super fans are and who your regular fans are and who people who like your page who really aren't your fans are. And it's very, very, very interesting in that regard. And believe me, I am not good at any of that. But it's super interesting in that regard. So I come at it at a very different angle. And that's why I'm so fascinated by this, because it is so interesting at this point. But obviously, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I just have an opinion from my last 7 years on this and what I've seen and what I haven't seen. So yeah, super interesting. This entire
we could go on for days about a lot of that,
I just feel like everybody, you have to be almost a marketer or a comic writer. You have to be a jack of all trades.
You do. You have to be a salesperson, really, at the end of the day, which I think, and this is going back to another thing, just, to mention, I haven't done a con yet. Like, I haven't been at a con as a vendor I've never had a booth. I've always wanted to do it. I've always wanted to interact with people and just make some friends and stuff and hopefully sell some books, but I haven't got to do that yet. And I've went to conventions and I've observed and watched, and the ones that attract the most people have an attractive product, and they're really good at talking with people. Like, they're really good at interacting with them, and they don't really talk about themselves. They ask more questions about the people that are coming to the booth. Like, hey, where are you from? What do you like to do? What did you come here to see? Like, they have good conversations, and then that makes them good salespeople because they build rapport with all these people and they build that connection, and it's a lot easier to start talking about something you're passionate about because you got to learn about those people first. So I did watch and see that a lot, and that's why I learned that. And
so many tricks.
Being a salesperson is important to your promotion, absolutely.
And I think even just wanting to promote your product is massively important right now as well, in any capacity. And obviously, I think also we are in a great digital pivot. And that's not exclusive to comics, where if you are not doing something digitally, you are going to be left behind. And whether it's something like this, or it's something like, digital comics, or even just selling online, you are going to be left behind. There's a great digitalization pivot. There's a lot of changes in society that have occurred because of COVID. More people are working from home, and let's be realistic, people don't want to go back to the office. And that's a big change as well. There's a big change in work patterns. People don't want to go to the movies. I mean, look, Mortal Kombat just came out on HBO Max. Right. You could go see it in the theater. Now, I went to go see a movie in the theater, but that's a different discussion because it was Demon Slayer, and that wasn't on HBO Max. But my point is that I think that it's very different at this point with that as well. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting world. And I'm curious before we get into rewards, because I do want to show a bunch of these covers. Might be a spoiler alert in some ways, and I'm not going to press too hard on some of these covers because they do reveal some stuff. They do. But where do you even think all these Comic-Con stuff is going, and even selling online and pushing out, and where cons are going? Because it is a whole different ballgame. And I think we're returning back to normalcy. I mean, I'm getting my second vaccination shot in about a week.
Good luck.
Which is a lot faster than I expected. I was betting on July. Last time I think we spoke, I was saying I was going to get vaccinated in July the way it was going.
Wow.
Good.
I just got mine. I got mine this past weekend. I was out for a day. I felt a little funky the day before and the day after, but there was one day where I was just bed.
My first shot wasn't good.
Oh, really? I just had a soreness in the arm. Do you have Moderna? Did you do Moderna?
Oh, I think I did Moderna, but my point is that it was weird the first one, and I'm gonna have a bitch of a week because I'm getting like 4 more cavities covered 3 days before that, so I'm gonna be fucked no matter which way we cut it.
So can we have another one of these when that happens with you? Like, I just want to talk to you in the middle of all that. Maybe I can interview you.
Yeah. We'll do that interview someday. It's also David Wellen needs to teach me how to draw because I'm terrible at it, and maybe he'll teach me how to actually draw my comic book in the process. But I digress right there. But where do you even all see this going? Because it's not about me. How many times do we even have this conversation? Because it's always about me. But in all seriousness, where do you even see all cons going? Because obviously there's a lot of changes that are occurring in society right now. I mean, digitalization and that pivot is going to affect everything.
I don't know, just because of where I haven't been on the vendor side.
You have an opinion. You just don't want to say.
I know. I'm sheepish to predict things because I think there will be people that crave the experience of being at a convention. And so there are going to be people that flock to that. I think the format of it will change. I think certain people will, over time, not see value in it anymore because they feel that they spend more money to make less when they go to conventions. I think I've talked to a lot of creators that feel that way about it.
But even 10 years ago. And they felt that way. So there's a very famous piece out there by Dave Dorman, who's a major comic artist, and he does a lot of toy designs. And he was speaking about this maybe 6-7 years ago, where he was saying that I sometimes only break even at cons because there's a cosplayer and people are there taking pictures of cosplayers. Nothing wrong with that. But when somebody has 10-foot wings, and obviously I don't know how many people can see what I'm doing, but this arm is
You've got wings, chicken wings. That's what you're. But yeah, you're right, and that's just part of it. I think that not everyone's gonna get the attention that they feel like they deserve when they're present at a convention,
And do you feel that because the way I feel is that statistically this is going to do anywhere from 250 to 400 views. And whenever I start putting it out in all these comic groups, and also if I wanted to, I could spend money to get more views on it. And do you think that doesn't mean sales per se, because obviously we're not selling, but a lot of people do sell comics. And I think that's something indie creators have to do. And you guys almost need to create the indie comic shopping network. Might be doing it, just saying, where it's not a bad idea in reality what I just outlined. If somebody wants to do it, please feel free to take it, because I really do not want to run that. But it's this idea that, I don't know exactly how it would all work, but it's this idea that I think that, you can reach more people online than you could at a con. It's also massively cheaper. You're doing everything from your house. You're not And, I get that going to a con is important, but I could ship anywhere in the world from my house, and I'm doing it in my eBay business right now. legitimately while I'm sitting in shorts and a t-shirt, and I can buy all my product from my house and have it shipped to my house. And I don't have to leave my house to do my business anymore. And it's fantastic. And so that's where I think things are going anyway.
For sure. And then on the digital side of it's very similar. You know, it kind of plays into that, right?
The digital side's even easier.
NFTs, right? It's kind of like the big thing now, right? Like that's, you know,
the what rights?
NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
But I don't even get that. I
do.
honestly do not.
You want me to explain it to you real quick? Imagine.
Because I think, honestly, when I want to read a digital comic, I go on Comixology. I don't give a flying fuck about owning it. I want to legitimately buy my comic for $3, and I want to read the latest issue of Batman because I'm interested in reading the story on my iPad. I don't really view this as an investment. I don't get that component because I think people just want to read it. I don't think people so care. Some people do, but I think the majority of people say, hey, look, I just want to read this thing and I want to enjoy it and I want to, you know, have it. And that I don't really view this as an investment. And here's the other problem with an NFT, in my opinion, from what I know, is that no offense to anything, but if it's an indie comic and it's a cool series, but it doesn't have an IP attached to it and it dies out and it's not worth much.
Right.
Why would I go when I could legitimately go buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, or I could buy a mutual fund or an index fund if you're going to charge me the same amount of money for the NFT? If you're going to give me the NFT for free, that's a different discussion with the book.
Yeah. And again, it feels like a brand new thing. I know it's been going on for a while, but it's definitely something that I know a lot of people are starting to explore. I've talked to a lot of artists that have started to explore that. So
I have an opinion on it. I think it's bullshit. I think it's a bad investment. And here's my issue with an NFT. The whole point of an NFT is I think it's a gigantic scam. I really think it's a gigantic scam because they retain a piece of it that they get a royalty every time it's sold. And it's creating a perpetual royalty against moi. Okay, when I buy a stock, I buy AT&T. Okay, I own that dividend. My brokerage firm doesn't own a piece of that because I own the stock. An NFT is as if, you know, my brokerage firm got $1 every time I got a dividend or I sold AT&T. They don't get a piece of that. So if I bought AT&T for $1 and then I sold it for 30, my brokerage firm sees none of it. I see all of it. The person I bought the stock from sees none of it. So that's why I think this is a gigantic scam that a bunch of artists created saying, oh, we're going to really make our money each and every time this is a tradable commodity and that we're going to make it so that it's tradable, or that if it's only traded 5 times in a year, well, and it's traded each time for $25 more, we're going to make $2, $3, $4, $5, and it's going to be kicked back to us.
Yeah.
That's my problem with NFTs.
I get it.
I'm taking the risk.
Hey, you know what? I'll never do it. Okay, you can count on me to not explore that simply because it's so intricate that I don't want to be involved with anything that I don't understand fully, right? And I think a lot of times if it's not something if it's intricate, chances are there's probably a scam in there. There's something in there that is meant to be concealed to a certain degree. I think I can see a little bit of that in it. But the thing is that there's people that will do it and have done it. I get it. There's a platform for it. So it's when will it go away, or when will it evolve?
It's not going to go away. No question, it's here to stay. I just think it's so hyped up, and I think that there's no exchange for it. There are minimal exchanges. It's in its infancy, and I think people are going to learn very, very quickly what it actually is. And then they're going to figure it out. First thing, if I'm going to own anything that's crypto, I'm going to own Bitcoin or Ethereum or Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin whatever. There are better things to own than an NFT, and especially because NFT and comics are extremely priced right now with what they're being explored on. And also, why would I want to own the hard asset first? I'd rather own the hard asset, especially if there's only 250 printed, and I deal with this. I'm on the opposite side of this. This is like, I know this space as far as exclusivity, and a digital exclusive to me doesn't make any sense, especially if you only have like 50 of them, digitally, like, and also you have corporations that then get the royalty, and it's not even the artist, and that's where it gets even further complicated.
That's where it can get really dangerous too. So I understand that.
This is the idea of what was intended as a good thing, because an artist has to make money, and then they sell for $50, but the thing is really worth $250. That was the theory, from my understanding.
Right.
But now you have WWE creating NFTs, and WWE is a $3 billion company that every time that thing gets sold, they get a piece of it. Are you kidding me? And then now that's the idea with bigger NFTs. It's just creating a perpetual royalty through whoever owns or created the NFT, and then they give you the coin, versus you mining the coin and owning the coin yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a whole, and I think people have to fully understand that. But that's so off topic. You should never.
No, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Like, I shouldn't.
No. It's fascinating.
It really is. Like, we can talk about Kickstarters, cons, all those things, but something that's breaking right now is that. Like, that is definitely here and now something that's happening in the indie art community,
and everybody is excited for it until you sell your NFT. And you're like, man, I'm getting $1,000, and it's like, nope, you're getting 900. What do you mean I'm getting 900? Everybody's happy about this until they realize that somebody's getting money taken out of their NFT, and like, but I just bought this for 800. I'm only making $100. I thought I was making 200.
Yeah,
that's when people are going to pay attention. That's when people are going to be really pissed.
Right. And I think over time it'll evolve and people will see more of that. And it'll modify, adapt, and change. Whatever its form is now, it won't be that a year from now. We all know that. It just changes. It has to. Just like we've had to. We've had to adapt and evolve, even from a physical format. Right.
I'll say this right off the bat. Again, the people I had on before you, about 30 minutes before you, 40 minutes before you, they have NFTs attached to their book. It's cool. It's a cool concept. It's included. I get the fact that it's the new hip thing, but and I like those people, but it's creating perpetual royalty because they created the coin. Mm-hmm. So whoever creates the coin with the NFT, because that's what it is, it's a token. It is creating perpetual royalty. Right now, I could create a token on this interview, and then I could sell you this interview for $10. Now that's in the marketplace. Now you move that thing out for $20. I then get, if my royalty or my perpetuity component is 0.05 on it, which is 5%, I'm getting $2.50 or $2 off of that. And that coin now goes up to 40 and it's sold again. All of a sudden, if that coin is traded 1,000 times and each time it bumps up by $2, all of a sudden I recouped more than my $10. Right. And while you made money on it, you didn't. I made more money than you did.
Right, because you were the.
And it creates almost a reverse perpetuity pyramid scheme.
Yeah, makes sense. Wow,
it's brilliant.
So I'm making a note right now. Don't do that, Mike.
Do it multiple times.
Like,
I'm going to create this.
Never bring up NFTs. Andrew again. Got that. Made a note of that. I'm making notes. Hold on. Just trying to make sure.
So obviously I want to get off of NFT.
Yeah, let's.
It's super interesting. I have an opinion on it. Again, I'm also self-interested because legitimately it hurts my business. And I think that you can't make as much money as people think you can make with them, and I think it's a horrific, investment thing. And I would talk more about it, but I don't have a Series 65, so that's the end of that conversation. A Series 65 allows you to financially advise people. For those who don't know, and you don't need a company to sponsor you. I really want one, and I might get one in the next year. just so I could have it on my resume. Series 65. Awesome. It's awesome.
Love it.
There's other reasons why too, because I want, but I want to talk about the rewards. And so obviously digital is you have a bunch of digital stuff, and that's cheaper. It's straight to your email. I believe you could get issue 1, 2, and 3 in a combo pack digitally. I think you can get issue 3 digitally. And then what else can you get digitally? Because I'm not exactly sure. Is that just the bulk?
So I can. I don't know if you want me to just stop with digital, but the rewards.
Well, we're going to talk about the physical. I promise.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say I didn't want to go too far ahead or anything like that, but digitally, I try to keep it really simple. For a lot of the people that weren't familiar with the series before, making it very easy for them to jump on board. The digital catch-up tier is like $13, so you can get the first 3 issues for $13 digitally, and on top of that, you can also do the same for other books that I've made, like Midnight Highway and Undercity Tales, where you can purchase those as add-ons.
Yeah, let's talk about that too, because
yeah.
What are those books really quickly so that people know that
Sure.
add-ons? Obviously, you can also get the physical books. So let's say that you have issue 1 of Black Jackets. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you could add on issues of Black Jackets as well.
Right, you can. Yeah, you can add on issues of those if you want. As far as the other books are concerned, Midnight Highway is just this love letter to 80s horror and science fiction. It's best way to describe it is Alice in Wonderland meets Twilight Zone. It's this kid that is driving home from a date, gets stranded on this supernatural highway that's full of just all kinds of crazy, wacky stuff.
Learning about life.
Yes, there you go. So the whole story is just him on this endless journey down this highway where he sees all these just, fantastic and unusual supernatural entities and events, and he has to find ways to navigate through them. So that's every issue, and I co-write that series with Alex Madej, who's a buddy of mine, and so that's the first issue that we have out of that right now, so you can pick that up. And then Undercity Tales I co-wrote with Scott Wilkie, who's also a friend of mine.
He was on this show.
Yeah, that's right. He was on. Well, he's on with me. Did you have him on separately too? Did I?
No, I didn't have him on separately.
Okay, yeah. All right. So he was on with me. We also worked on Dead End Moon together, which that book's not out yet. But Undercity Tales was a sci-fi noir story set in the 1950s. There's this underground city on planet Earth where all these refugee aliens have come to our planet to start over. And they're all living in this massive underground city together. And it kind of highlights the corruption and intricacies of so many different people from different cultures living together. Kind of mirrors what really happens to us out in the real world, but with an alien makeover. And so we're following.
Equal, but some are more equal than others.
Right. There's dominant species down there, right? So I deal with there's different issues that would be addressed through that series. So we have issue 1 out of it. We are going to go back and help develop that series probably after this year, but we put it on a brief hold to explore some other titles. But you can pick up issue 1 of that as well as an add-on. And
then let's get back to Black Jackets, because there's a bunch of issues, and I want to show them because you have 6 variants, but you have more than 6, and I'm going to explain why. But we're going to leave it at the 6 initially. So obviously we got this one, which is cover A, which is, I believe Francesco did this cover, and it's just the standard cover A. I guess technically it's a variant, right? Sort of.
Right. I guess you can call it that, since it's the primary cover. It's the original.
So that's cover A.
Yeah.
And then this is cover B, and this is done by Yeah, you all can read because I'm not good with names.
Federico Sabatini.
And so,
He's a friend of Frank's. He just got picked up by Marvel. He's going to be working on a book for them. So I thought I'd go ahead and mention that in there.
So what is this like? Because a lot of indie books have a cover A and just a cover B. And so obviously bringing in somebody who just got picked up by Marvel, having a cover B is kind of nice in there where it gives a choice, and also doing this cover where it's more of a little bit of an action scene and it's got a little bit more movement to it. And so what was that like getting this in there?
We just both, Frank and I both just told him to do what he wanted to do. Like he had an idea of just, like you said, like the action movement, which is not something that we'd had on a cover really illustrated that same way, because that was a very almost felt anime, I guess, in a way, with the way that it's illustrated. Like there's just that kind of the kinetic feeling that you get from that, like the just the, like you said, movement, right? You get that from it. And I think when he sketched it out and sent it to us, we were like, yeah, this would be something different that we haven't seen as a cover before. So there's a lot of trust that I put into the artists to just illustrate what they're inspired by when they look at the series. So every cover artist that I have, I send them my Dropbox folder, let them see all the art for all the books, and then they come back to me with an idea of what they want to do.
And then let's talk about this one too, because this one is Summerdale, and obviously it has a significant component to what happens and what sort of things are going, and it's a bit of a spoiler. And so what was that like to have a spoiler cover out there?
So, what's funny is it feels like it's spoilery, but it's not. Once you read this book, it's really not. I thought this image was striking. And it's inspired from a panel in the book that actually I preview on the Kickstarter anyway. So everyone, just skimming through the project can see when this actually happens in the book. But I liked the imagery. I thought it was really striking. She does a great job. She does great work. I've been a big fan of hers for quite some time. We're buddies now. We play Mario Kart together. She beats the hell out of me in it. But same thing here. We just kind of talked about what would be a really striking image for a cover, and this is what she came back with, and I love it. I think it's really haunting. It's very hypnotic, and ominous, and I love all of those things so much. The way that she portrayed them in that cover.
And then there's obviously cover D.
Yep, Alex Monick, who's a buddy of mine as well.
It's called Bandcamp, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what I love about this one is that it kind of conveys the fun of the book that I think's in there, and I think she did a great job of illustrating them in respect to the way it's illustrated inside the book, but also being true to her style. And what she did so well in this, I think, was just the characterization of all the people and all the kids in the black jackets, and making really good use of the space. So really big fan of that cover. One thing that she did for me, a little Easter egg, is in the bottom left of the cover. There's a little monster hand up there doing the devil horns. So I really appreciated that.
And then obviously we get cover E.
Edward Bentley.
So that's his art. And they're obviously fighting, something.
Yep.
So that's out there. So and then I want to do cover also F, where that there's somebody significant, I think, in cover F.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so cover F in particular, Keith.
I love talking about these artists. That's the most fun that I have in making comics, is not writing the stories, but getting to work with awesome artists. And the thing that Keithan Jones has just been somebody who's just been a really good mentor for me when I started in making comics. He makes the Power Knights, and he is the owner and operator of Kid Comics, which is where I made my first comic book, The Dragonfly. And he was really encouraging and supportive and gave me a lot of, wisdom that I think that I've gained. I've gotten a lot from him, and I always really enjoy a lot of conversations that we've had over time. But it was really an honor to get him to illustrate for the Black Jackets. And really, for me, it's hard to pick a favorite cover, but from just the emotional side of this is my favorite cover because of just it's a Keithan cover, and so it was really great to have him on board and making that cover, and I love it. He did a great job.
It's a cool cover, and obviously 6 covers, a lot of choice from a lot of people, and this is a big one for you because this is the first time you did 6 covers, and then to make things even more complicated, there you can upgrade each of them into a foil/metal type thing. And so for $10, I don't know if that's done right after you pick your book and pledge with the new list option that Kickstarter outrolled, or if that's in backer kit. But obviously, what does that entail? Because that's cool too, because it upgrades the book in a lot of ways and adds a new thing to it. And you don't have to do it. You could just, if you like your comics a certain way, you could have that. But what is that like for you to give it that thing, and what is it exactly looking like? Because foils are one thing, metals are another, and which is it?
So I wish I had one with me. It's kind of hard to describe it. It's just it just has the shine of metal. It looks metallic without being metallic, right?
So it's a full foil cover,
right.
Versus a metal bounded book.
Correct. Yeah, not a metal, no, metallic foil. That's how it's described.
Metallic foil that's printed a certain way, and obviously that's still cool though because it adds a certain element to it and it changes the dynamic of the book. And so that's something that for $10 you could actually add on, and it sort of upgrades the book into being a very interesting variant per se. And it's not even that expensive. So obviously that's a cool feature that makes this project different than other things out there. And so I think that's a nice reward that is not that expensive. And then obviously there's a bunch of other stuff that's always in there, being Black Jackets. And I know a bunch of people have done that already. And for the first 2, and obviously for issue 3, you can get if you're a retailer and you want to pick up a bunch of these, you can get a bunch of them at a discount rate. You can get a 6 demon bag. What is that exactly?
So I had a lot of fun with this one because this was something that Frank and I came up with a little bit later on. It's kind of just it's a physical goods, right? It is having this black velvet bag filled with items that are inspired by Black Jackets that Black Jackets was inspired by. It's a way for you to kind of feel like you are a Black Jacket. That's really the purpose behind it. But you've got this black velvet bag that's filled with stuff like, there's a wax sealed spell scroll that's personalized to each backer. So if you want to break the seal on that spell scroll, when you open it up, it's going to have a unique incantation that is just for that backer. Or you can keep it wax sealed and you'll never know what was in it. And that's fine too. You get an amethyst crystal pendant that would be something that a demonologist would use to trap demons or store demons in. A glass vial filled with this concoction that the character Jack uses in the book, kind of like a performance enhancer. So you're going to get that. That's be something more than an alchemist would use. There's a tea light holder. There's a leather-bound journal that'll be embroidered and have your name engraved on it. Lots of stuff. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are going to be in there. But the whole idea behind that is to have something that's very personalized and for you. And as a big thank you for being a huge supporter for Black Jackets.
And so there's a lot of cool stuff in this. And then obviously you could get shirts and a variety of other things are also associated with all this. And, I think there's some tarot cards and some enamel pins and a variety of other things that are out there. So for if you like black jackets and you want a bunch of cool stuff with it, I'm sure there's something. And I'm sure some of this stuff can also be picked up in backer kit too, or you can back it, and obviously you can upgrade your books and all sorts of stuff. You can get combo packs that feature all 6 books and things of that nature. So obviously there's a lot of cool stuff surrounding all of this. And so obviously, you know, backing the Kickstarter is the way to get this, and a lot of cool stuff. And so, yeah, where can people, you know, find you on Facebook? Where can people check you out? Obviously, I'm not too sure if you got a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook page. Where's the Kickstarter app? Because obviously I want people to back it. I know you haven't been promoting it per se, but you got 5 days left, and I want people to know where they can find it. Obviously, the link's up above. And so that's obviously you can do that, but where else can they find all this stuff and even support you beyond this and be informed of when you drop your next project?
Awesome. So best way to find me right now is Facebook, under, you know, my name, Mike Teener. Very simple. That's usually where I try to keep everyone in the loop most of all about any projects I got going on. I have an Instagram handle. It's Mike Makes Comics. And then on Twitter, it's makes_Mike. So those are the 3 channels that you can find me on right now. I just fired up a Vero account, but I don't know if that's even really, I'm not even sure if that's something I'm going to get any traction with, but right now I'm in the process of building a site. And then I'm also kind of like, I'm in a transitional period. I guess I can't go into too much detail about that right now, but it's hard to say where you're going to be able to find all of my books as of right now. So it might be exclusive. It might be available everywhere. I'm still working on a lot of that. But one thing for sure is if you follow me on Kickstarter too, as a project creator, then you'll be informed of any projects that go live that I create on that platform. And you can always take a part in the next book that I put out. And I always have options for you guys to catch up on other books that you missed when I run campaigns. But that's the best ways to find me.
So on that note, obviously I've been saying it to everybody, and as much as I can, you have to support indie. What that means is twofold. So you have to back people's Kickstarters. If you like a project, you like what you heard here, you have to back Black Jackets 3. Got to pick up books, whether that's digital or physical. It is super, super important at this point to back people and support it, because these books cannot be made without people backing it. We are not Marvel, we are not DC, we are not Image. You know, and obviously if you're funding something on Kickstarter, there's a reason why it's being funded. And yes, the fan is and the backer is extremely important to make that happen. But again, I get it. COVID's been tough on a lot of people. Money is tight. People, please take care of yourself. Take care of your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, dog, cat. If you got kids, make sure your kids are good. Make sure your rent is paid, your mortgage is paid. Make sure you got food, electricity, water, shelter, all that stuff that is basically needed for survival. Also, make sure you're good for the next month as well. Because while we are turning the corner on COVID, and I'm very optimistic, things are going to be rough for a little bit longer, and things are not coming back the same way that they were, and it's going to take some time. So please make sure that you are good on that. If you have debt, you know, make sure that you're paying that down too. And if that's the case, follow people on social media. It makes a huge difference. You know, liking somebody's Instagram post, following them on Instagram, it is super helpful. You know, it gives indication. Obviously, following somebody on Facebook or Twitter as well keeps them informed. Obviously, following people on Kickstarter, even if you're not backing their project, following them as a creator, you will get notification emails of when projects go live. And that is super helpful, because maybe you can't back Black Jackets 3, but in 5 months from now or 6 months from now, Black Jackets 4 comes out and you're in a better position and you're informed on that. Or you're just kept in the loop on Mike's next project, and you're like, oh man, I backed this, but still followed, so that you're aware. Like, man, this came up. Oh man, I really like his work. Boom, you can back it. So obviously that is super important. And if you are backing it physically or digitally, and you're throwing money at it, for lack of a better word, you should still be doing all the social media work, because it does make a difference. And even just hearting or retweeting something or liking, giving it a heart every other post on Instagram, or maybe even once a week, it makes a huge difference. So please go do that. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word. Sure.
Thanks. So for everyone watching, thanks for sticking around. I guess what I would say about supporting the indie community, not even supporting me. I mean, there's a lot of great creators out there doing a lot of great projects, and maybe not all of them will be on Andrew's show. Some of them may never do shows. So I did want to give a shout out to a couple real quick from some personal friends of mine that have done some great work. And
hopefully they don't hate me yet. So
what's that?
Hopefully they don't hate me yet.
Yeah, right. I still like you, so that counts, I think, a little bit. So Fever Volume 1 is a really big one. From a buddy of mine, Ryan Cummins, really great writer.
Backed it. I just backed it.
Did you?
Seal of approval. He's coming on soon. Cool. We're going to talk about that. So we're not going to talk too much about that, but it's good. Really good. If you like Bang Tango, which is an Adrian Sabar book, Fever is very much like that book.
Cool.
I want to put that. You need to put that on that book. Pop Anime Comics. That's the quote. The new Bang Tango.
The new Dane Tango. Gotta check it out. That one for sure is a big one that I would like for a lot of people to check out.
Oh, and speak about Ryan's book. First 24 hours. There's a special deal going on with Ryan's book that if you back in the first 24 hours, you get an extra bonus. So for those watching it, it's super important to back that book.
Please do that soon. Yeah, because you
get a really cool print. You get a cool print with it. It's awesome.
Yep. So I'm really excited for him. I think it's going to do great things. But any opportunity that I got to bring it up, I think is important. So definitely check that one out. I'm from West Virginia, so I've got a buddy that is also from West Virginia that has a book up called Pinpricks, the graphic novel. It's doing pretty well. It's achieved its goal. It's got 9 days left on the campaign. I've got it pulled up right now, kind of looking at it. But it's an anthology series, and it's full of a lot of witty, macabre instances and scenarios and characters that I think if you're a fan of Neil Gaiman, if you're a fan of Guillermo del Toro or Tim Burton or any of those, I might be overlooking a few other writers and artists out there that might be inspiring Jason on this book. But I think anything that deals with the darkness and horror, but still finds beauty and humor in it, it's a good hybrid of all those things. So that's a really great book that that's up on Kickstarter right now. So please check that out too. Those are two that I would just bring up right away. There's several others I could, but those two for sure get my endorsement. And I really think that those are two projects that everyone should really check out and consider supporting.
And I'm going to add my thing into this. So I have a Cash App link up there. If you want to support this show or throw me a few shekels, feel free to. It's definitely appreciated. No requirement, but definitely it's not easy to do any of this, and legitimately running StreamYard every single month. So feel free to also do that, because indie is not just comics. There's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff, and whether that's Go Coffee or Patreon or anything like that, it goes a long way. So keep that in mind. But again, no commitments from me. But for those who are interested, that's what that link is. As well as go watch all my other interviews too, because I get money's tight. But seriously, like my other interviews and share them. Even more so than supporting me monetarily or even donating any money to me, I really appreciate when people share my interviews. It makes a huge difference, whether that's private in a messenger or just in a group or to your personal page. It makes a huge difference. So please go do that as well. And on that note, I think that is a wrap.
Thanks, everybody.